Okay, it's shortly after 3 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is John Servos. I am the Director of Commercialization Education at Fast Forward Medical Innovation, also known as FFMI for those of you on the call from outside the University of Michigan. And I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Before I introduce our speakers, I do have a few things that I would like to cover, including some technical housekeeping issues. Please keep your microphone and your video muted throughout the webinar so we can cut down on background noise and distraction. If you would like to ask a question today, please type it in the chat feature. Or if you would prefer not to type your question, you can submit an X to indicate that you have a question and you would like to unmute your microphone and ask the question yourself. We're a relatively small group today, so that should be just fine. I will be monitoring the chat function and we will address these questions periodically during the presentation. And then of course, at the end, we do have a transition in between the two speakers so we can take questions at that time as well. Note that the presentation is being recorded and we will share a copy of the recording and a PDF version of the slides with you. Today's webinar is titled Strategies for Developing Digital Health Technologies. It is intended to provide a closer look at the development milestones and timelines for software, apps, and other digital health technologies. It is provided by Fast Forward Medical Innovation, as I mentioned, a unit of the U of M Medical School Office of Research, where we help biomedical researchers accelerate innovations from idea to impact. There are 4 functions to FFMI. Briefly, we provide education, such as this webinar, and additional courses to teach commercialization concepts. We have multiple funding opportunities that come with mentorship. We have a business development team to connect investigators with company partners, and we provide these services as a state and nationwide network as part of a hub. Today's webinar is the 3rd of 7 that we are offering as a series. Broadly, the goal of the series is to outline and describe critical concepts related to commercialization, analyze unique paths to market, and appraise diverse models of academic and industry collaboration. You can see a full lineup here as well as on our website. And I'll note that the next webinar is Wednesday, July 22nd, and will focus on medical devices and diagnostics. The final note from me that you might find interesting is the FFMI Innovation Studio. This is very similar to office hours for innovators who are working on a project. But we're going to enhance the typical office hours experience by having you register in advance with a description of your innovation and submit some preliminary questions. That information will allow us to invite the appropriate experts from our network to give you the best advice. More information on the studio can be found on our website. The next studio is being offered on July 21st, and I do know that there are a few slots still available. So with that, let's introduce our 2 speakers. We're going to hear first from Michelle Larkin, who serves as the Director of Commercialization Programs at FFMI. Michelle has extensive experience facilitating commercialization grant funding projects and providing mentorship in the technology planning and development process with academic inventors, as well as outside companies. Prior to FFMI, she was a project manager with the U of M Coulter Translational Research Partnership Program and a biomedical engineer with the U of M Pediatric Device Consortium. She also has experience working for multiple Ann Arbor-based startup companies that have spun out of U of M technologies. Following Michelle, we'll hear from Dr. Jimo Borjigin, who is an associate professor of molecular and integrative physiology, as well as neurology at the University of Michigan. Her work is focused on systems neuroscience and improving the abnormal features in diseased heart and brain. She has developed and received funding for a novel method to evaluate ECG signals, of which she will discuss with you today. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Michelle, and let's get things started.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and I'm excited to speak with you today about digital health technology development. And so we're going to provide a brief overview of digital health development at the university level. And as you can see here, the main trajectory down the middle of this diagram is really focused on the technical development, but really where I want to focus our attention today are on a couple of non-technical development items that will provide a unique perspective and something to really focus on as you develop your digital health technology. So we'll focus today on contextual inquiry or customer discovery, as might be familiar to you, value drivers for your stakeholders, and how you develop a business model that's suitable for your digital health technology. So some unique considerations before you start writing that code. We really want to focus our attention on if we're solving an actual problem that we've identified that could benefit from a digital solution. And if we do, who cares enough to pay for this solution? What are they willing to pay for? And how much are they willing to pay and why? And so we really want to focus on problem identification, building a solution to solve that problem, digital or otherwise. And then focusing ultimately on our customer and how they're going to drive value enough to pay for our digital innovation. So first we'll start with the problem, focusing primarily on the unmet medical need. What causes the unmet medical need? What are the consequences if it's not resolved? How many people does this affect? And as opposed to maybe traditional or medical devices or therapeutics, we're not having a direct impact on the epidemiology of the unmet need, but maybe we're having a more indirect or tangential impact on this problem, be it the speed of diagnosis of a particular condition or enhancement of therapy through a digital innovation. So think about kind of the direct and indirect problems that are associated with unmet medical needs that you're looking to solve with a digital platform. And then we want to assess the competitive landscape. We want to think about what's currently done. And I think that this, in terms of digital health, is probably our most large competitor, is what's currently being done and how can we get people to do something in a different way. We want to think about the future standard of care. So if other people are trying to address this problem, what are they trying to do? Or if people have tried to address this problem before and failed, we want to examine that as well. So we want to understand what the marketplace had to say about other instances of somebody trying to solve this problem. And then we want to look at the market dynamics and if they're favorable for adoption of a digital solution. Once we understand what our problem is and what our competition looks like, we want to develop stakeholder profiles. So we want to think about all the types of people or services or processes that are going to be influenced by our problem and ultimately influenced by the solution that we're developing. So these may be clinicians, patients, caregivers, insurance companies, anybody that would interact with your potential digital solution. And then we want to understand from each stakeholder's perspective, what problem are they experiencing, what's causing the most grief for them, in what type of digital solution, if it is a digital solution, would they benefit from. So what frustrates them about the status quo, and what would incentivize them to make a change in what they currently do. And then we want to conduct a customer discovery process. And I think that customer discovery is especially critical and important for the development of digital health technology, especially because digital health technology, from a can you build it perspective, with enough time and resource, I think the answer is yes. The technology on the whole exists to create whatever type of digital health innovations you want, but we really want to make sure that we're building the right thing for the right stakeholder at the right time. And so we want to develop our value proposition and conduct our customer discovery to understand who cares and why they care, and if they're willing to pay for a solution. And when you're approaching your customer discovery, I want to urge you to validate the underlying need that you're trying to solve and not sell your technology to them, as opposed to providing them information about your technology and what your digital solution may or may not do. You want to focus your customer discovery efforts on what are the current things that they do now, what is difficult about that, how could you intervene and help alleviate some of those pain points. And we want to focus our interviews on the professional side of the house, so think providers, physician practices, insurers, and then on some of the more end user side as well, patients, and what are their greatest needs and pain points. And ultimately, we want to design to add value clinically and also to the end users that are using our technology. So we want to design to add value. So through your customer discovery process, did you validate that the problem that you identified exists with your stakeholders, and does the solution really have to be a digital one? And if it is digital, what type of digital solution would be the best way to solve the problem? Is it a web-based platform? Is it an app? Is it both? Depending on your stakeholder. That will help understand your user requirements and your user needs, which will ultimately lead you to a more efficient development process. And then ultimately, we want to look at too how your stakeholder will benefit from adopting your technology. So in terms of alleviating a lot of their pains or inefficiencies, how do they benefit from adopting your technology? It may be in the form of cost savings. So maybe there's better labor utilization if you're able to translate lower level skills to a digital environment, which may free up your skilled workforce to do things that are more worthy of their time. You may in turn increase their productivity. You may reduce expenses related to kind of high acuity, high expense events. Resolving bottlenecks for increased efficiency, improving outcomes or access to care. It will be really particular to your particular innovation and how your innovation is driving value for your stakeholder. What I want to focus on too, up until now I've used the word stakeholder, and in particular when we're doing customer discovery, especially in digital health, we're focusing a lot of our effort on our end users. Patients or providers, the folks that are going to directly interact with the technology that we're developing. And a lot of times we're not focused specifically on the customer, which may or may not be the same, but is rarely the same as the end user. It's not unheard of, but it's less likely that a patient or a provider is going to be directly paying for the technology that you're providing. And so we want to add value in terms of their interaction and workflow with the technology, but we also need to add value to our customers who are going to be paying for this technology. So who is the customer for this digital health technology? Who's going to pay for it? And why are they going to pay for it? The customers are potential partners or acquirers of the technology, and they may include companies, hospitals, physician practices, insurance companies, or payers. It could be any number of different types of customers, but you want to identify which of these customers are likely to partner with you and likely to partner with you, either pay for your technology or acquire it. And at what stage are they going to partner with you? Are they going to partner with you early on in the development process, after you have a single site's worth of data, after you're already selling this technology on the marketplace? So that's a good way to pivot after you've done your initial customer discovery effort, to pivot your customer discovery towards your ultimate customer, to understand at what stage will they partner with you. And then you can also do some secondary research in terms of other technologies that may be similar to yours that have partnered with these types of customers, or looking at a particular customer's past partnering history and at what point they've engaged with different technologies and how that may influence your development path forward. In terms of how your customers will ultimately pay for this technology, that is one thing that is very critical to assess, especially at an early stage in development. When we think about typical ways to pay for biomedical technology, such as medical devices, diagnostics, or drugs, there's a pretty traditional pathway forward for reimbursement, which includes the 3 C's: coding, coverage, and cash, which essentially means that there's a particular billing code associated with a procedure or service, which may or may not be covered by an insurance company. And if it is, there may be a payment associated with that. So it's a bill for service model. This is still largely the way things are paid for in the medical arena. We are seeing some trends towards value-based care or bundled payments for certain services, and quality or penalty incentives for certain types of care delivery. On the whole, traditional reimbursement through billing, coding, and payment is not necessarily applicable to digital health technology right now, although it's becoming increasingly more important. There are certain types of digital care delivery that are reimbursed in the terms of telemedicine visits and remote patient monitoring through Medicare, Medicaid, and some private insurers. And we've seen a large increase in this given the current pandemic situation and a lot of transition to telecare. However, in terms of digital health development, the traditional reimbursement pathway is largely unknown or undeveloped at this point. There are some strides in the digital therapeutic arena in terms of transitioning from traditional therapeutic technologies to a digitally delivered therapeutic platform. This is still on the horizon and has not yet been really thoroughly seen in the marketplace up until this point. The most likely way that an end customer will pay for your digital health technology is through a concept called margin mitigation, which is essentially an upfront cost to pay for your technology, which provides some benefit or cost reduction to that customer in the future. So they're paying upfront for a perceived benefit down the road. It's a little bit risky for them to do this, which is why traditional reimbursement as a fee-for-service has been the predominant way that the medical technology gets paid for. But at this point, it's the most likely option for digital health technologies. So you want to think about and do some customer discovery around what the value of your technology is worth to a potential customer in terms of cost savings, reductions, better outcomes, and any other ways in which they would financially benefit from your technology. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't at least briefly touch on intellectual property as it relates to digital health innovation, because this is a topic that comes up a lot about how digital health technologies are protected. Patents, which you may be most familiar with, are possible and are typically tied to algorithms or methods for analysis, but they're potentially difficult to enforce given the timeline that patents take to be issued, as well as patents put your information out into the public domain. And so it's very hard for you as somebody who puts their patent protection around their technology to enforce, boundaries around your technology if somebody else is working on something similar, but theirs is not in the public domain. Other forms of intellectual property that apply to digital health technologies include copyrights, which is an expression of your code as it is written. These are implicit upon writing, however, would change frequently if you update your code. Trade secret is the most commonly used form of intellectual property, which is essentially as good as your secret keeping skills. If you don't divulge how you're doing or what you're doing, that can protect you from other people trying to copy. And then as academics, open source is another option for intellectual property around your digital health innovation. This provides open access to your code to others, provided that they attribute the original development back to you. Two resources that I'd like to refer you to conduct this customer discovery and value proposition development effort are the FFMI fast-paced course, which is being offered in September through October of this year. More information can be found on our website about fast-paced. And then specifically for digital health development, the University of Michigan Office of Tech Transfer has a digital discovery process, which is a software-focused customer discovery process that also includes user requirements, stakeholder profile development, and some wireframing to help you flesh out how your technology should be developed, which provides you a good basis for going to a software developer to get a technology developed. So there's more information about that digital discovery process on the tech transfer website as well. And I gave you a very, very high level overview here in this presentation, but for a more broader look at development milestones and timelines for digital health, I would encourage you to watch our 10-minute YouTube video on this topic, which includes a lot of the things that I covered, as well as particular development processes, timelines, regulatory considerations, and a more in-depth look at some of the topics that I covered today. And with that, I'll wrap it up.
Great, thank you, Michelle. And I'll add that on that same YouTube channel, there are additional videos that touch on some of the individual topics that Michelle discussed, such as intellectual property, reimbursement, regulation, so forth. So feel free to explore all of those. So as we transition now from Michelle to Jimo, we're happy to take a few questions. So Jimo, if you'd like to get your slides ready and share your screen, we can transition now.